Hey guys, Just Nintendo here. Thank you so much for joining me. I know this is not my usual content, obviously, what you see in front of you. I am doing a Donkey Kong Country tier list. Now, my original thought was to do a Donkey Kong tier list in general with all of the games, but there are, I will admit, quite a few Donkey Kong games that I haven't played. I haven't played the one with the bongos. I haven't played King of Swing. There are quite a few that I haven't played. I have played all of the mainline Donkey Kong Land and Donkey Kong Country games, so I found this tier list, and I thought it would be fun to go through and kind of give my, I guess, even though I already did the videos on it, obviously, I thought it'd be fun to go through them individually, rank them in comparison to each other, and so that's what we're going to do. I don't know why it's listed like this. It's all out of order. But we're going to start... We're going to get the Land trilogy out of the way first to kind of give you guys a basis of how I'm ranking these. So, Donkey Kong Land. The Donkey Kong Land games are weird because the first one, a lot of it is very different than Donkey Kong Country 1. Whereas 2 and 3 are almost pretty much a direct adaptation. There are definitely differences to their Super Nintendo counterparts, but a lot of those two games is the same. So, however, with Donkey Kong Country, or with Donkey Kong Land 1, a lot of the camera work is just it's bad. It's a Game Boy game, so it's very much a product of its time. But that being said, comparing it to these other games, I'm going to have to put it in C. It's not a terrible game. None of the games on this list are terrible, in my opinion. But quite honestly, that one is the worst. And then next, like I said, we're going to get through the Land trilogy. Donkey Kong Land 2 is still a C tier, but it is better than Donkey Kong Land just because the camera it follows you much easier, and I kind of like that it's a port. Obviously we had the Game Boy Advance trilogy that came out, which was just the Super Nintendo games, but with some added content. Having the games on the go on the Game Boy was really cool, and yeah, it felt better to play. The camera, it followed you better. And like I said, Donkey Kong Land 2 and Donkey Kong Land 3 are essentially just Game Boy ports of the original trilogy with little differences here and there, whereas Donkey Kong Land 1 has quite a few major differences. And Donkey Kong Land 3, I'm going to put it behind Donkey Kong Land 1. This is all going in C tier. Again, they're not terrible. They're not awful games. But Land gets put in last place just because I don't like, and this is a very common theme on my channel, I don't like that it's called Donkey Kong Country and that he's only playable in the first game. I don't like Kiddy Kong. He dragged that game down substantially in my opinion, and so I'm putting Donkey Kong Land 3 in last place so far. Now, on to the main event. We've got those out of the way. Here we go. We're going to go in order of release. Donkey Kong Country goes in S tier without question. My favorite video game ever made, even though I was -6 when that game came out. It's the reason that I fell in love with video games. It's the game that made me realize how much time and effort and manpower and willpower it takes to make a game, with the music and the graphics and the ambience and the atmosphere and all of that being accomplished on the Super Nintendo. All things really made me realize how special it was and how video games can be channeled not just as a medium but as an art form. And I've made so many video essays on this game that I'm just regurgitating things I've already said. But this game, it's as near to perfect as you can get a video game, in my opinion. So, Donkey Kong Country, easiest S tier I've ever given anything. Next is Donkey Kong Country 2. Now, I actually don't know where I'm going to put this, because as you guys know, I prefer Donkey Kong Country 1 to 2, but I'm Okay. Please don't crucify me. I'm gonna put it in A. But it is the strongest A that you can give something. Donkey Kong Country 2 is a perfect sequel. As I said in my video essay on it, it is as perfect as a sequel as you can get. It's not a perfect game. Some of the platforming is a little wonky and a little bit unfair. I know people don't like throwing that word around when you're talking about 2D platformers, but just to me, there were a few instances where I got really frustrated because I'm like, how was I supposed to know that? How was anyone supposed to know that, especially with a 4:3 aspect ratio? And so I'm putting it in A, but like I said, it is the strongest A tier that you can possibly give something. It is a perfect sequel. It is a masterclass of a video game. Stickerbush Symphony, the music, David Wise absolutely killed it with that soundtrack, obviously. I'm sure you've all heard it. Donkey Kong Country 2 gets a very strong and very respectful A tier. And I have to think of where I'm placing other games that are coming up, so that's why I put in A. Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble gets a very solid B. I do enjoy this game more than I'm sure most people do. A lot of people simply despise this game, and Kiddy Kong really didn't help that. Obviously, Dixie Kong is a fan favorite. She's a... Wow, I just had a stroke. She's a fan favorite. People love her, as they should. She's a great character. She was a great addition to play with Diddy in Donkey Kong Country 2. The hub world, the overworld with the lakes and the land and the hovercraft thing was great. That was such a cool addition to this franchise of games, and I loved it. I just wish the rest of the game was up to the same standard as the overworld. As I don't mean for that to sound mean. It had a great hub world, had a great overworld. The music was very good. It wasn't David Wise. It wasn't up here. It was down here, which is still respectful. It's better than 80% of game soundtracks that I've played. A lot of very I wouldn't say iconic. A lot of very memorable tracks that I find myself whistling and humming along to as my days go on and as I get older and more grizzled. So it gets a very strong B. It's not near a C tier, and I'm honestly tempted to put it in A, but I can't find myself to put it in either of those, so it's B. B is just fine. B is a solid game. It was an adequate finale to that trilogy of games. Next. Okay. There's a caveat here. So, Donkey Kong Country Returns is a great game. The 3DS version of the game would go right here. If we're talking the 3DS port, it goes behind Donkey Kong Country 2 in A tier. It was a fantastic return to form. I wish David Wise would have returned. They just kind of reused all of his themes in a more modern context, which I get. I mean, you already had all of the themes. This is his first Donkey Kong Country game, and it was a long time. So I understood not bringing him back, but I wish they would have. So that's where it would go if we're talking about the 3DS version. If we're talking about the Wii version, it's going to go down here behind Donkey Kong Country 3 in B tier, which is still solid, but there's a couple reasons for that. The first one, 3DS has bonus levels. I haven't played it in a long time, but if I remember correctly, the 3DS version has an entire other world that the Wii version just didn't have, which the HD version will have on the Switch, which is probably going to go in A. And the other thing is the motion controls. I despise motion controls, especially, like, Wii Sports, I get it. With this, if they would have made it a choice, this would be the easiest A tier of my life. But they didn't. You have to use them if you're playing on the Wii. To make him roll, which is a pivotal and one of the most important things you can do as Donkey Kong to gain speed, to knock back or kill enemies, you have to shake the remote, and I hate that. I loathe that. I don't want to shake this to make him roll. That's like... So with Super Mario Bros. Wii, for example, jump, if I remember correctly, was 2, I think, or maybe it was A. It was one of those buttons. To do the propeller thing, you had to shake it, which is fine. You could still jump without doing the propeller thing. You didn't. If they would have mapped jump to shaking your controller, I would have despised that. I would have put Super Mario Bros. Wii in D tier. because that's such an important part of the game, and you're forced to shake your controller. I can't stand it, and I know a lot of people don't agree, and a lot of people like that. It makes it more immersed. If that's you, that's great. I hope that you continue to be immersed, but for me, the Wii version goes in B, behind Donkey Kong Country 3. 3DS version, I'm going to put it, since that's my preferred method of playing it at the moment, right here, it's going to go in A, behind Country 2. Now, this is the main event, if you will. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze came out on the Wii U. I'm just kidding, I'm not going to give you a history lesson. This is going in S tier, and it should surprise nobody, because this is quite literally one of the best 2D it is... Ooh. It's the best 2D platformer ever made. And now I'm sure you're saying, Justin, you put DKC 1 in front of Tropical Freeze. How would you hear that? I think Tropical Freeze is a better 2D platformer, but I think this is pretty much just nostalgia talking at this point. I think Tropical Freeze is probably a better game than Donkey Kong Country 1. But the impact that the first game had on me is unparalleled when you compare it to any other game that I've played. So there's that. But Tropical Freeze brought back David Wise. It brought more playable characters. Dixie is here. In Returns, it was just Diddy, which was fine. We're returning to form. I totally got that. This one, you have Cranky, and you have Dixie, which is super overpowered. Why would you ever use anyone that's not Dixie? And you had Funky. You could play Funky mode, which I don't care. I've played Funky mode, I think, like, for 4 or 5 levels, and then I quit. I should do a Funky run. That'd be kind of fun. But it did a lot. It did so much for this franchise. It sold well. It reviewed well. It's in the 90s across the board. It is an insanely well-reviewed game, because it should be. It's near perfect. And we still haven't gotten a new Donkey Kong Country game or a Donkey Kong mainline game in over 10 years. So thank God for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. I know it's a port. I know it's probably going to be $60. Twitter made it very, very clear that you should not be excited for that game. But I am a Donkey Kong fan, and if buying that means we have a better chance of getting a new Donkey Kong game sooner rather than later, I'm all for it. So there's my Donkey Kong Country tier list. Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? I know the Donkey Kong Country Game Boy Advance ports aren't on this list. I mean, I couldn't find one that had them. If I had to, they would be pretty close. I would probably put the first in S, I'd put the second in A, and the third in B. They're very close in quality, and what they lack in graphical fidelity and audio fidelity, they make up for in bonus content, especially in the first game with the mini games and stuff. So it'd probably be the same, just behind their counterparts. Okay, the Game Boy Advance of Donkey Kong Country 1 would actually probably be behind Tropical Freeze, but the rest would be right next to them. So that's it for today's video. I know it's different from what I usually do, but I thought this would be fun. I love watching tier list videos, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this too. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. If you agree, do you disagree? What would you change? How would you rank them? I look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.